Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started in just a few moments, give people some time to refine the link and get into the call. But thank you so much for being here this evening. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome. We will get started in just a few minutes. I want to make sure everyone gets the link just in case they lost it. One more minute. All right, we'll get started. Welcome, everybody, to our family support series on First Gen Plus Resource Center and all the amazing things that they are doing. My name is Dalen Orlick. I'm the Associate Director of Family Programs here at George Mason University. And I'm very, very excited to welcome our speaker and presenter this evening. I will let her introduce herself in a moment. But for folks who are joining us this evening, I just want to give a few housekeeping rules and a few housekeeping things for you to be able to engage and interact with our program this evening. So first and foremost, as you have questions or if you need anything, you can put them in the Q&A chat box. I will be going ahead and monitoring that, and our presenter will be doing the same to answer whatever questions you have about the incredible resources that they are providing. There is closed captioning available for you. So if you need closed captioning for accessibility purposes, or if technologies, you can make sure that you can see what we're saying right there on your screen. You can just go to the bottom of your screen and you will be able to click captions and it should show up for you. Additionally, this is being recorded. We record all of our family support series and we put it on the Mason Family website, which is just masonfamily.gmu.edu. And we will send this out via email in the Mason Family Connection for everyone to be able to access this incredible information. So with that, I will turn it over to our guest speaker this evening to talk about First Gen Plus resources and some terminology and everything else that we do for your students and for first generation college students, among many other populations here at George Mason. So Nakia, I turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. Good evening. My name is Nakia Waters. I use she, her pronouns. I am the Assistant Director for First Generation Student Support within the First Gen Plus Center at George Mason. I work along with my colleague, Ramel Aguilar, who is the Assistant Director of Undocumented and Immigrant Student Support. And we are currently in the search for a director. Thank you for joining us this evening. All right, so one of the reasons why we're doing this particular workshop tonight is because it is First Gen Week. So November 8th is First Gen College Celebration Day. And so every year surrounding the 8th, during that week, we have programming and different initiatives that specifically celebrate our students. And so that's the graphic there. And then on the right, you see the I Am the First t-shirt, which I am wearing. I'm also a first generation college student. So our week kicked off on Monday with us outside, making cotton candy, playing music, handing out these t-shirts for students to wear throughout the week. Students are really proud to wear these t-shirts. They're really proud to say that they are the first in their families to go to college. And so whenever we see someone and we're both wearing the t-shirts, we point at each other. There's also the definition of being first gen and what that means, which I'll talk about a little bit later. That's also on the back. This is just a way that we, boost visibility and a source of pride for students. So just a little history of the First Gen Plus Center. Mason has always done this work of working with first gen students. So they did that through the Student Transition Empowerment Program, the Office of Student Access and Equity in various iterations throughout the years. But First Gen Plus Center was made a center in the summer of 2021. And so this work is not unique for different colleges and universities, but it is unique that we have a department or a center that's solely focused on working with first gen students. So our mission, the First Gen Plus Center supports students who are historically underrepresented in higher education and their allies, while specifically centering college students who identify as first generation, those who identify as undocumented, have a refugee status, or those who have families with limited income. The picture that you see here, we've been celebrating First Gen students for the week, First Gen Week, for a couple of years now. And so the picture that you see is the first time that we actually celebrated on campus as a group. That's why the folks have on masks, but it was really special because it was the first time that we came together to actually celebrate this identity. So we just want to make sure that folks understand the definition of a first gen student. So there's a federal definition, and it just says, a college seeking student whose parents have not completed a college degree. But our definition is a little bit different because we want to be inclusive, because we work with students who are undocumented, who are refugees, students who have DACA. We want to make sure that they're included. And so our definition also includes if your parent did not get a degree within the United States. Getting a degree outside of the US can look a lot different. And so we want to make sure that those students are included as well. So our definition is if your parent did not receive or complete any level of post-secondary education, if your parent enrolled or earned a 2-year degree from a community college, if your parent earned any level of post-secondary education outside of the US. And so students who are first gen, they may have older siblings who went to college. And because those siblings are within the same generation as them, we still count them as being a first generation college student. So just recently on our applications, we've started adding the question, asking students if they're first gen. We put the definition and then we ask them if they're first gen. And so all of our undergrad students are solely being accounted for. And we're working on that for our graduate students, because graduate students can be first gen as well. Who we serve. So of course we serve the first generation community, but that includes students, faculty and staff, and community members. And so with community members, we typically do high school visits. We talk to various community organizations and work with them for various things. We have Undocumented Ally training, which I'll talk about a little bit later, and that's open to community members, even the folks on this call, faculty and staff. So there is a faculty staff first gen affinity group at Mason. Just today, as part of First Gen Week, we had a faculty staff mixer where folks who identify as first gen were able to come in and spend some time and build community together. So this slide essentially says that our work is to make sure that George Mason's campus is first gen ready or undocu friendly. And what we mean by that is that policies and procedures are already set in place for this student identity, so that we don't have to finagle things and change around things to make sure that students are supported, so that when they walk into any office or department, that those folks are ready to work with them. So that's what we mean by that. I want to go through just a little bit about the first gen and immigrant student identity. So one thing that's really present in a lot of first gen students is imposterism, and you may also know that as imposter syndrome. And so that's when a student doubts that their skills or their accomplishments, they have this fear that they were accidentally let into college, that people are going to realize they're not smart, that people are going to realize that they're a fraud. And this is something that kind of sticks with folks for a long time. I graduated college a long time ago, and sometimes when I walk into a space, I still feel this. And so a lot of our students deal with imposter syndrome. Something else is finances and limited income. So not all first gen students have a limited income. I think that's really important. There are a lot of folks who just say first gen low income or first gen limited income, but the two don't always go together. But finances are typically an issue for a first gen student. And at Mason, 65% of students receive some type of financial aid. And it's important to highlight that undocumented and students with certain immigration statuses, they don't always have access to certain things, especially qualifying for federal aid. And I'll talk about a little bit about that later. Family support. So students typically don't have little or no financial support from their parents. And sometimes students experience something called family achievement guilt. And so what that is when sometimes students, when they're in college and they come from a place where they didn't eat every day, or the lights got turned out at home or something like that, they feel this immense guilt that they are in a place where they can just go to the dining hall and swipe their card. They're in a place where it's warm inside and things like that, and they worry about their family back home. And so even though they're in college, they still are walking around with this guilt that others in their family don't get to experience what they're experiencing. So that's something that's typical of a first gen student. Resources. So first gen students may not be aware of resources available and typically use less campus resources than continuing generation students. And when I say continuing generation students, that just means that a student's parents did go to college. Immigrant origin students face additional barriers to access resources depending on their immigration status or family background. So a student who has DACA, which is a deferred action for childhood arrival, those students can work on campus, but an undocumented student cannot work on campus. And so it's just different resources are available to different groups of students. academic preparedness. First-gen students may enter college academically underprepared and in need of developmental education. So depending on the school that they went to, they may not always be ready for college in the way that we would like. Another thing that I want to talk about is, so the things I've just talked about can be looked at as negative, and a lot of times that we talk about first-gen students from this deficit, but it's not all bad with first-gen students. There's some really great positive things. So we want to highlight community and cultural wealth. So even though parents may not be able to give their students financial support, their parents can also often be like a great motivator. So family and community is like something that students have that helps them get through college. A lot of our students speak multiple languages. A lot of our students are resilient and know how to persevere through hard times. A lot of our students know how to navigate different systems. And so I just want to highlight that it's not all negative when it comes to first-gen students. They're wonderful to work with, and I learn so much from them every day. So this is just a graphic showing first-generation student use of resources within the first year. And so the first line, it shows that more first-generation students use financial aid services than continuing generation students. When it comes to health services, academic advising, and academic support services, they don't use those resources as much as they should or they could. Sometimes it's because they just don't know how to use the resources. So sometimes students need help just, writing an email. Sometimes students don't want to ask for help. There could be a lot of different reasons for this. Sometimes they just don't know the resource exists. And so the only thing that they're kind of neck and neck on, first-generation students and continuing generation students within the first year, is using career services. Those are about the same percentage. Here we talk about proactive advocacy and intentional support. And we define proactive advocacy as a strategy to anticipate, identify, and aid in the resolving of student issues before they become problems or crises. Whether it is through proactive support or creating resources such that when the question does arise, the student is presented with the answer and may not need additional help. So for instance, if we notice there's something called office hours where students are kind of expected to go and visit their professors during these set hours that professors are in class, right? And so we've noticed that a lot of students either don't use office hours or don't fully understand what office hours are for. Some people think they're only for if they don't understand something. Some people think they only go to office hours if they're in trouble, and that's not always the case. So because we know this information, sometimes we make sure that we highlight for students what office hours are. So we have a newsletter that goes out every single Friday. And in that newsletter at the top, we have something called the tip of the week. So sometimes we'll put in there, do you know what office hours are? Here's a link that explains it. This is something that you should be doing, right? And so when it comes to creating resources that when the question does arise, a student can just go to that resource. We've also created a resource guide for first-gen students, and that lives on our website. And that's another thing that we sometimes will put as the tip of the week. Like, did you know that the First Gen Plus Center has a resource guide? So if you ever have any questions and someone's not available, you can always go into that guide and you can look for what you need. These are our programs and initiatives. So in the fall, we have early admit STEP recruitment. So STEP is the Student Transition Empowerment Program. It is a 6-week summer bridge program that starts from mid-June to the end of July. Incoming first-year students are able to apply to this program. It's completely free. They take a class, which we pay for. They stay on campus for those 6 weeks, and it just really helps with the transition onto campus. And so a lot of students really benefit from this. And there's also scholarship funding that helps them every semester that they're attending Mason. And so in the fall, we start recruitment for that. We go to different high schools. High schools come to visit us. We do different fairs that are put on by admissions just so that folks know that STEP exists. In the fall, we also have First Gen Week, which is something I've already talked about. We also have First Gen Peer Mentoring. So if a student is within STEP, they automatically get a mentor. But a lot of folks aren't in STEP, and so we have an alternative for folks who would like to get a peer mentor who are not in STEP. And these peer mentors, the ones in STEP and the ones in the First Gen Peer Mentoring Program, they must take a class to learn about what it is to be a mentor and how to be a mentor. In the spring, we have Undocu Month, which is kind of like First Gen Week, but we have it during the whole month of usually April. And it's just programming that's surrounding the undocumented identity. The STEP application officially opens in the spring. Then we also have First Gen graduation and STEP graduation. The first couple of years that I was here, we did a pinning ceremony where we hand out pins to students, and their families are welcome to come to celebrate them. But this past year, the Center for Cultural Equity and Empowerment approached us. We noticed that a lot of the students that work with them are also first gen. So we had a graduation together, and we called it the cultural graduation. And so CCEE, they gave out stoles, and we gave out our pins and green and gold cords. And a lot of parents came, and it was really great to see students celebrating. And if you want, you're allowed to have your parent come on stage and to put your stole and cord over you. And it's really meaningful for a lot of our students. And then, of course, in the summer, we have STEP, which I talked about previously. We have some forces on campus where different campus partners come together with us to talk about different student identities, to talk about how we can help them. We talk about different resources that are available. So we have a first generation student task force, we have an undocumented student task force, and then we also just started a refugee student working group. When it comes to policy and data, we do a lot of research on whether STEP is helping us to retain students. So there's a lot of data about students coming for 1 year and dropping out because they were overwhelmed or they didn't find the proper resources. And so we do research on the students who are in STEP to see if them being in that program helps with retention. There are also a lot of policies that we have for undocumented students. And so we have to be aware of all federal and state policies for our students just to make sure that they are aware of the resources and they are also aware of their rights. So when it comes to those policies, we have to stay aware of them all the time. Then we also offer some trainings. So Undocu Ally trainings was started by Undocu Mason, which is a student group on campus. And so we work together with them to support them in these trainings. And so these trainings are about the undocumented community. We talk about policies, procedures, we talk about resources that are available to them. We talk about language and what we can say and what we can't say. And those are also open to community members like you. So we offer 3 sessions in the fall and the spring. We usually have one that's virtual, and we have 2 that are in person. And if you come in person, you also get lunch. And again, you're welcome to come to those. The information is on our website. And so it's just something that's really, really good. And we suggest that folks, because policy changes so often, we suggest that folks take this training at least like once every 2 years. Here are just some other programs and initiatives. Undocumented students are not eligible for federal aid, but through different requirements, they are offered the Virginia application for state aid. And so we do a workshop surrounding that. Some students just get overwhelmed with what those requirements are. And so once a year or twice a year, we do a workshop that makes sure that students understand that application. We have cookies with cats. A lot of students, there's a stigma surrounding getting, therapy. We have CAPS, which is the Counseling and Psychological Center at Mason. And so through there, we do a lot of programming and initiatives with them to make sure that students understand that CAPS is free. They understand other mental health initiatives that are offered to them, that they understand that they can call after hours. So we do something with CAPS throughout the year. We have lunch and learn workshops. So occasionally students have questions about different things on campus, and sometimes they don't always want to go to that department. So for instance, last year we had a resume workshop where career services came in and they talked about how to build your resume. And during that workshop, students were able to eat. They had a Chipotle or something like that. And then they were able to ask their questions, because sometimes as a first-gen student, you don't want to feel like you don't know something that you should know. And so you may not always go and ask that question. And so we make sure that we have these lunch and learn workshops so that they can ask questions amongst themselves, just so that they feel, more comfortable. We also have fall into wellness and spring into wellness. A lot of the things that we do at Mason and within the First Gen Plus Center, they usually have this purpose of trying to teach a student something, and a lot of it is necessary, but students also want opportunities for joy and relaxation. And sometimes our first generation students don't always have that opportunity. And so during finals in the fall and during midterms in the spring, we have something where it's only focused on relaxing. It's only focused on wellness. We color, we make face scrubs and bath bombs. We plant succulents. We play, jazz in the background. And the whole focus of these programs is student well-being. We also have graduation cap decorating. Again, this is a big accomplishment for our students. And so we want to make sure that they have all the resources to celebrate themselves. And then we have I Stand With Immigrants Day of Action, Undocumented and Student Success Summit. And then we also have our Undocumented Scholars Award. Because students who are undocumented don't get to have federal aid, even though there's Virginia aid, they don't have federal aid. There's sometimes some financial barriers. And so this just eases that barrier a little bit for folks. And the Undocumented Scholars Award comes directly out of the First Gen Plus Center. This is just a screenshot of what our website looks like. It's recently changed. So the green pictures are now actual pictures of students. But the top row is the different identities of students that we work with. And so if you were to click that, you'll find out more information and resources that are specific to that identity. And then on the second row, we have the I Am First faculty and staff list. So when I was in college, I did not use the term first generation college student. I knew I was the first, but I didn't use that terminology. And I didn't know who was first gen. I didn't know who my professors were, if they were first gen. And so this list is just faculty and staff who are on Mason's campus who identify as first gen. And it's really great for visibility. It's really great for students to see what's possible for them. And what's great about this list is that there is an Ask Me About section. And so if the faculty or staff member has filled out the Ask Me About section, that means that they're willing to talk to a student about whatever it is that they put in that section. And so students know that they can approach a faculty or staff member with certain questions. We also have the I Am First podcast. And so I want to acknowledge that there are a lot of students who still don't come to campus, who take a lot of online classes. And so we want to make sure that everyone is being reached in some way. And so we have faculty and staff and students who come on the podcast to talk about their experiences. And so we also did one that was specifically about imposter syndrome. And so it's just a really good listen. And we've had folks as far as Germany and Singapore listen to it. And so that's pretty cool to know that folks in other countries are interested in what we have to say. The next link is to the resource guide that I talked about earlier. We go through it periodically to make sure everything is up to date. But it's a good resource for students to go to if they can't get in touch with us. Lastly, we have the trainings link, which is the link directly to the Undocu Ally trainings that I talked about earlier. All right, so this is just a way to stay connected. We are on Instagram, Mason FGPC. And something that I want to highlight is that here at the bottom, it says FGPC, which is First Gen Plus Center. Professional staff are available by appointments via Navigate. And so students are able to meet with academic advisors or make appointments with academic advisors through Navigate Mason. And so we're also on there as well. So if a student ever needs to meet with us about anything, they could go on there, pick what they need to talk about, and just make an appointment with us. And something that we found that most students want to meet and talk about financial resources, or they want to talk about just understanding resources on campus. And so that's the kind of the main thing that students need and want from us. We're basically a connector for a lot of students, making sure that they are aware of what's available to them while they're on Mason's campus. So that is my presentation. I gotta admit, I wasn't really looking in the chat, so I'm gonna look now to see if there's any questions or anything.
Yeah, for folks who might have questions, please use the Q&A feature. I've been dropping some links in the chat for folks to be able to access and do everything. But if you have questions specifically for Nakia that you'd like to know more about, or things specifically for your student, please feel free to use the Q&A feature over the next, we'll give it like 2 minutes for people to ask questions. And if not, we'll wrap up a little early this evening.
Yeah. And you're always welcome to email me. So if you think about something later and you're like, oh, I wish I would have asked that, or I want more information on something, I can put my email in the chat so that folks have it.
Any questions from our folks? All right. Well, Nakia, thank you so much for your time this evening. I really, really appreciate it. I know our families will really, really appreciate it. Again, for those who might be watching it online, please don't hesitate to contact the First Gen Plus Resource Center. Their website is firstgen.gmu.edu, and you can visit their website to be able to get any and all information in case you were unable to attend this webinar this evening. They are just an incredible resource for you and for your students to be able to be supported and kind of have another additional community here at Mason. So happy First Gen Week to everybody. And Nakia, thank you so much again for your time. But we will go ahead and end tonight's session.
Sounds good. Thank you, Dalen.
Have a good night.